President Trump is continuing to scare the shit out of anybody with a brain. He threatened North Korea again in a tweet. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just stated that nuclear button is on his desk at all times. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. Wow. So people have pointed out at the, how this is kind of like a phallic thing happening. Oh yeah, mine is bigger than yours. So it really does feel like, two immature grade schoolers who are going at it, and they're just both insecure, and so they puff out their chest more and huff and puff more, and they do make arguments that seem like they're fairly phallic when you look at it. My button's bigger than yours. Mine is bigger than yours. What do you think? Like, how did he not realize that when he was typing it out, that that's how it comes across? That it comes across like a dick measuring contest. And listen, Kim Jong-un, the reason he was saying, I have a nuclear button on my desk, just so you know, that's him scared as fuck that the U.S. is about to attack. So this is him attempting to deflect. This is him attempting to say, but please don't attack me. I have a nuclear button, so if you do, I can retaliate. That's what he's doing. The idea is deterrence. And you could say, Kyle, you're being pie in the sky, hippy-dippy, thinking that this crazy guy, Kim Jong-un, cares about deterrence. But it's not just me saying it. This is something that the deep state in the U.S. and our generals have acknowledged internally for a long time. That, of course, they're no offensive threat to us. And the reason they want weapons is because look at what we did with Libya. So Gaddafi saw what happened with Saddam Hussein. And Gaddafi said to Washington, oh, come take here, you can have my weapons. I'll give them up, no problem. And he was doing that because it was a gesture of, here, I'll give you the weapons, but you leave my regime alone, don't topple my regime. And then what happened? He gave up the weapons, and then we toppled his regime anyway. So the lesson Kim Jong-un takes away from that is, oh, don't trust the Americans, never give up my weapons, ever. And the more scared he is that the U.S. is going to do something, the louder his bark becomes. The louder he's like, yeah, hey, I'm strong over here. I got weapons and shit. So look out, bitch. Yeah, no, you better beware. But of course, it's always spun in U.S. media as he's being some sort of an aggressor, which is hilarious because Trump there's an interesting admission in this Trump tweet too. Because he said, quote, will somebody from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him, yada, yada. But hold on. So his regime is depleted and food-starved, but you're saying he's a threat to the biggest military that ever existed in human history? That's ridiculous now, isn't it? Sean Hannity the other day was tweeting about this. He tweeted a story of like, people in the military in North Korea scavenging for food because they're so poor. But somehow they're a threat to the United States of America. Again, the largest military that ever existed. We spend more than the next 9 biggest countries combined on military. They can't even keep the fucking lights on at night. So it's amazing how there's this paradox, these contradictory arguments that come out at the same time, where they go, North Korea, they're a gnat, they're really poor, they're underdeveloped, they're stuck, 100 years in the past, they're an unsophisticated regime with no power. That's on the one hand, they make that argument when they're trying to say how superior we are to North Korea, and then on the other hand, they go, and they're the biggest threat in the world to us, and they're really about to attack us, so, hey, we need to fucking be aggressive against them. And it's like, come on, man. How do you not see that? It's like having Mike Tyson talk about, like, a punk-ass 7th grade bully, And he's like, this guy is I'm going to try to do my Mike Tyson impression. He's like, he's a punk-ass bitch. That's what he is. He's a punk-ass bitch, and he's really weak and everything, and that's why he's the biggest threat to me that I've ever seen, and I'm going to have to knock his ass out. Like, Mike, what? You were just... He can't be a weak person, and then you're like, that's why he's the biggest threat to me. That's what they say about North Korea. They're so weak. But they're the biggest threat to us ever, though. The fuck it... So it's amazing how we just kind of accept, people casually accept. The media would never point out what I'm pointing out to you right now. They never point out the deterrent argument. They'd never point out how the points are contradictory. And by the way, come on, what's crazy is people will actually believe it. That if the United States were to attack North Korea, the media would wholesale fall for the line of the U.S. government, which is, we found, that they're about to attack us. They're not going to fucking attack us. They're scared for their fucking lives, that regime. The only way that they would ever launch any attack against us or South Korea is if they were 100% convinced we were just about to attack them. That's it. Because they know they can't survive a war with us. They know they can't survive a war with South Korea. So it's just, and this is dangerous too, man. I mean, look, that's the obvious point, but the way you're supposed to handle a situation like this if you're a president is basically the exact opposite of what Trump is doing. Because any level-headed, reasonable, logical, rational person would look at the basic facts on the ground, look at the history of North Korea and how we've already bombed the fuck out of them and massacred civilians there. And they'd look at the deterrent angle and they would say, okay, you know what? When he starts barking, it's not because he's like, I'm about to try to fucking invade Nebraska and annex it. It's because he's scared that we're going to do something to him. So you just ignore him. You let him fucking bark. You go, whatever. My radical idea, which people would say is controversial, but I think is actually incredibly uncontroversial, is if you don't do negotiations with North Korea to get to some kind of mutual understanding and some kind of reduction of certain weapons, well, then you don't do anything. You just do nothing. They're a threat to their own people. And by the way, they are terrible to their own people. Everybody knows that. They got fucking concentration camps over there. But there's no way to solve that. It's just not possible. What are you going to do? You're going to fucking... If you attack them, they immediately launch on South Korea and you put hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in danger. There's no good answer. There's no good answer. And in the absence of a good answer, you go to the least bad answer. And the least bad answer is do nothing. Do absolutely nothing. He wants to bark, let him bark. I'm not even going to respond. I'm busy over here. I'm trying to get a living wage here in the U.S. I'm trying to end our other wars. I'm trying to get Medicare for all. I'm not going to fucking... I don't have time to think about that. Go ahead, blow off steam. You're not going to attack us. I'm not going to attack you. Let's move along. But no, he's escalating. And it's so fucking selfish because his own macho man ego, he's trying to puff it up. Nobody disrespects Trump. Nobody disrespects Trump. And he acts like, let me show this guy that mine is bigger than his. And whenever I read these aggressive tweets, I always think of, man, what about the fucking, single mother in Cleveland? You think they got time for this bullshit with Donald Trump? Again, they're just trying to pay the bills. And they got to worry about a president who might launch a preemptive war and spark hundreds of thousands, if not millions of deaths. And you might say, well, no, that's, you're extrapolating too much. What the fuck do you think the stakes are in this thing? Of course those are the stakes. People naively believe after a while that, the biggest kinds of tragedies are not possible. But they are. You do know that World War II was a thing. A guy named Hitler really existed and really set up concentration camps and wiped people out. And we had to fight a war. He took over almost all of Europe, and we had to fight a war to get it back, along with Russia as our allies, of course. Point is, you think that things can't spiral out of control? In World War I, it was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand that led the world into a war. That's a much less thing we're talking about than this, where every war is started by accident. One fucking wrong tweet from Trump where they think they're on the verge of attacking, and then they launch on South Korea. The stakes are so high with this, but he doesn't act like that's the case. He acts like he's on The fucking Apprentice because that's the level of intellect he's capable of. So this is fucking beyond scary, man. Jesus. Those really are the stakes. Those really are the stakes here. And you just hope that everybody around him can rein him the fuck in, but it doesn't look like they can rein him in. I mean, at this point, we're honestly relying on the restraint of people who fundamentally are neocons and are for war everywhere. But we're relying on them to rein Trump in and reel him in. And they go, okay, look, yeah, we're all kind of in favor of attacking North Korea and getting rid of the regime, but it's a matter of how you do it, and the way that you're doing it, Mr. President, is not a way that's going to be conducive to victory. But that's where we're at. That's what we're relying on. We're relying on fucking Mattis and Tillerson and clowns like this, fucking, you know, people probably in the CIA, Pompeo. They're like, yeah, we all love war, but especially with the rhetoric. Jesus. Be afraid, because I certainly am.